In this video, I'm going to show you how to take these two trig values that we are given. The cosine of u is equal to 4/5 and the sine of v is equal to 8/15. And we are also given quadrants. Alright, this little piece of information is telling us a quadrant, and this is a quadrant. And we're going to use that information to evaluate these trig functions. Okay, and we'll see how many of these we get to as well. Very interesting. But first we need to draw some triangles. So between 0 and pi over 2, that is simply the first quadrant. So we're going to draw our first triangle into the first quadrant. So imagine that this is the terminal side of an angle, and we're going to go ahead and make a triangle out of that. So if the cosine of this angle is 4/5, we know that cosine is x over r. So that means the x value is 4, and the radius r is 5. Now we have memorized the Pythagorean triple 3, 4, 5. So we know without having to do the Pythagorean theorem that this side is 3. But if this was not one of the triples that we have memorized, then we'd have to do the Pythagorean theorem. Okay, so we now have x, y, and r. Okay, now this is angle u, and I'm just going to label that real quick. Okay, this is angle u right here. So I feel like we should go ahead and just record sine, cosine, and tangent of u in case it comes up. So the sine of u is equal to y over r. So that's going to be 3 over 5. The cosine of u we were given in the first place, but of course that is 4 over 5. But also the tangent of u is y over x. So that would be 3/4. So we can use that if it comes up again. Meanwhile, between pi over 2 and pi, that is the second quadrant. So we will be sure to draw this picture into the second quadrant. Alright, so we will put our angle in the second quadrant, and we will make a triangle out of it. Sine is y over r. So that tells us that the radius here is 15, and this y value is 8. So we need to find the x value. I have not memorized this, so I am going to go ahead and do the Pythagorean theorem. So I know that 8 squared plus x squared is going to equal 15 squared. So that means that 64 plus x squared is going to equal 225. And I'm going to have to subtract 64 from both sides. So that means I will have x squared equal. So x squared is equal to 161. Taking the square root of both sides gives me x is equal to plus or minus the square root of 161. In this case, because we are in the second quadrant, it will definitely be negative 161. So a common mistake is to forget that negative sign, so please be careful. Alright, so we should go ahead and write down sine, cosine, and tangent. Again, so this time this is angle V. Okay, so let's just label this very clearly as angle V. Okay, so sine of V is going to be 8 over 15. That was given. Cosine of V is x over r, so that's going to be negative radical 161 over 15. And see if I can squeeze this in here. The tangent of v is going to be y over x. So that would be 8 over negative radical 161. So we can refer back to this as needed. So looking at number 7, the sine formula, when we're talking about the sum, is sine, cosine, cosine, sine. And sum stays addition. So that's what we are going to do. Alright, sine, cosine, cosine, sine. So now we'll just substitute all of these values in. So sine of u is 3/5. Cosine of v is negative radical 161 over 15. Okay, cosine of u is 4/5. And sine of v is 8 over 15. Okay, so this is going to make negative 3 radical 161 over 75 plus 32 over 75. So that's going to make negative 3 radical 161 plus 32 all over 75. So that is the final answer. As we do number 8, we are going to say sine, cosine, cosine, sine. So sine of u times cosine of v minus cosine u sine v. And we'll just substitute in all the stuff. So again, sine of u, let's see if I can get this. Alright, sine of u is 3/5. The cosine of v is negative radical 161 over 15. Cosine of u is 4/5, while the sine of v is 8/15. Okay, that's that. So this is going to make negative 3 radical 161 over 75 minus 32 over 75. So that's going to be negative 3 radical 161 minus 32 all over 75. So that's the final answer. Okay, so the sign of a difference. This goes sine, cosine, cosine, sine. So we're going to have sine v cosine u minus cosine v sine u. And now we'll just fill in all that stuff. So sine of v is 8/15. Cosine u is 4/5. Cosine v negative negative radical 161 over 15, and sine of u is 3/5. Okay, so this is going to make 32 over 75 minus negative 3 radical 161 over 75. Minus and negative is addition, so the final answer is going to be 32 plus 3 radical 161 over 75. So that's the final answer. For problem number 10, I went ahead and copied down these two values from our picture up above. We decided that tangent of u was 3/4 and tangent of v was 8 over negative radical 161. I just didn't want to keep scrolling up over and over again, so I recopied right here. Anyways, the formula for the sum of tangent is this: tangent plus tangent over 1 minus tangent tangent. So that's why I'm going to write tangent of u plus tangent of v over 1 minus tangent u tangent v. So tangent of u, that's 3/4, plus tangent of v, that's negative 8 over radical 161. Okay, and I've got 1 minus tangent u, that's 3/4, tangent v, again, that is negative 8 over radical 161. Okay, this is going to be pretty ugly. Alright, well, we need like denominators. So this is going to need radical 161. So I will do radical 161 in the numerator and denominator. And this is going to need a 4. So I'm going to do a 4 in the numerator and the denominator. Once I multiply these together, the denominator here is going to be 4 radical 161. So I'm going to use the magical power of the number 1, and I'm going to rewrite it as, I can write it as anything over itself. So since the denominator is 4 radical 161, I will just rewrite the number 1 as that over itself. So now everybody has like denominators, so won't that be just great? So this is going to be 3 radical 161, I'm right here, okay, plus a negative, now I will just write as minus, so that's going to be minus 32, I'm looking at u, 4 times 8, okay, and then we had our denominator of 4 radical 161. So that's the numerator. Now I'm about to do the denominator. Okay, so I have 4 radical 161. Okay. Now, this is a negative number, alright, because I have a positive times a negative, that's a negative. So minus a negative is a positive, so I know this is going to end up as a plus. That might have been a little bit confusing. I hope you can follow it. So these negatives are going to become addition. Anyway, 3 times 8, of course, is 24. So I'm going to have 24. Alright, so that's what's happening in the numerator. Meanwhile, we have the like denominator of 4 radical 161. Oh, look at that. We have the same denominator for both fractions. So those are going to cancel each other out, just leaving the numerators behind. Okay, so that's going to leave 3 radical 161 minus 32 over 4 radical 161 plus 24. So this is the final answer for number 10. Okay, cosine u minus v goes cosine cosine plus sine sine. So I'm going to do cosine u cosine v plus sine u sine v. So I got to go all the way back to this. I'm going to be substituting in these values right now. Alright, so here I've substituted in the value of each one of these expressions. So it's just a matter of simplifying this down. So I'm going to have negative 4 radical 161 over 75 plus 24 over 75. So I already have like denominators, so this will simply be negative 4 radical 161 plus 24 all over 75. And that is the final answer for number 11. Number 12, sine of 2v. Well, we will need these formulas. So sine of 2a is 2 sine cosine. So this is going to have to be 2 sine v cosine v. Alright, well, sine of v is 8 over 15. And cosine of v is negative radical 161 over 15. So this is going to make negative 16 radical 161 over 225. And I don't think this simplifies at all. Cosine of 2v actually has 3 different formulas, but I'm just going to use the first one, cosine squared minus sine squared. So this is going to be cosine squared v minus sine squared v. So where did I have that written down? So cosine v is negative radical 161 over 15. So that's going to be squared. And then sine v was 8 over 15. And that's also going to be squared, of course. When you square a radical, the radical just goes away. When you square a negative, it becomes positive. So this is going to result in having positive 161 over 225, 15 squared. Minus 64 over 225. Okay, so this is just going to make 97 over 225. And I believe that's the final answer. Now it's time to do the tangent of 2v. Now if I were foolish, and Lord knows I am not foolish, I would use the tangent formula and do 2 times tangent over 1 minus tangent squared. But that would be the long way because we just got through finding sine of 2v and cosine of 2v. So tangent of 2v, tangent is sine over cosine. So this should equal the sine of 2v over the cosine of 2v. Alright, 2 things which we just found. So sine of 2v is this negative 16 radical 161 over 225. So negative 16 radical 161 over 225. That's the sine of v. Now the cosine of v, 2v, is 97 over 225. Alright, luckily the denominators are the same because that means I can simply cross them out. And that just leaves behind the numerators of negative 16 radical 161 over 97. And that will be the final answer. Now, number 15 is a very interesting question. What is the quadrant of 2v? Don't overthink it. Think back about the sine of 2v and the cosine of 2v. That will actually tell you all of the information you need to know the quadrant of 2v. So let's see, the sine of 2v, the only part of this I need to pay attention to is the fact that it is negative. So the sine of 2v is negative, and then the cosine of 2v was positive. Okay, so what is the quadrant where sine is negative and cosine is positive? Well, let's think about that. Okay, sine is negative. Sine is a y value, so sine will be negative below the x-axis. Cosine has to be positive. Cosine is positive to the right of the y-axis because cosine is an x value. So cosine will be positive here and here. So the quadrant that satisfies both criteria, that's the fourth quadrant. So that's going to be the answer. Quadrant 4. Kabam. Now, number 16 is asking for the cosecant of 2u. I'm going to start off by finding the sine of 2u, and then I'll simply do the reciprocal because the reciprocal of sine is cosecant. The formula for sine of 2u is 2 sine u cosine u. So I am just going to be substituting in the values that we found for the sine and cosine of u. Okay, so that is going to give me, let's see, 3 times 4 is 12. 2 times 12 is 24, so that's going to be 24 over 25. Okay, so that is the sine of 2u. Maybe I can squeeze that in, sine of 2u. So that means the cosecant of 2u should be 25 over 24. Kabam. Alright, number 17 will be very similar. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine. So I'm going to start off by finding the cosine of 2u. And one of the 3 formulas for cosine is cosine squared u minus sine squared u. Alright, that's how you do the cosine of 2u. So I'm just going to substitute in the values that we have for cosine u and sine u. And we have learned that the cosine of u is 4/5 and the sine of u is 3/5. So if I square these, I'm going to have 16 over 25 minus 9 over 25. And that is 7 over 25. So keep in mind that what I've been finding so far is the cosine of 2u. But what I really wanted was the secant of 2u. So this means that the secant of 2u will be 25 over 7 because it is the reciprocal. Let's just do one more problem. We will do the cotangent of 2u. Now, of course, the cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent, so I'm going to start off by finding the tangent of 2u. Now, I know that tangent is sine over cosine. So, I'm going to ask myself, what's the sine of 2u over the cosine of 2u? Okay, but I feel like we just found those two things. So we found that the sine of 2u was 24 over 25. Okay, how about the cosine of 2u? All right, the cosine of 2u turned out to be 7 over 25. All right, now these denominators are the same, so they will cancel out. So that would tell me that the tangent of 2u is equal to 24 over 7. But what I really wanted was the cotangent. So this tells me that the cotangent of 2u is going to equal 7 over 24. So that is going to be the final answer. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this video. Go ahead and click here in the red apple to watch the next video. Click in the green apple to subscribe, or click the yellow apple for the full playlist.